Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining me here in this pre-recorded session of EDU631 on our Monday night class. I'm sorry that my schedule conflicts were created, but I am glad that you're listening in today. So let's get right into this, okay? We are recording. This is a pre-recorded session taking the place of the March 9th session, live session. This is 7:14. Here's our agenda for tonight. On March 2nd, we will have talked about the planning process and planning to plan, SMART goal setting, how to monitor progress, evaluate results, et cetera, et cetera. But now we are going to get into a review of that March 2nd session and talk in detail about the PTEC grants as an example of a partnership, and discuss the planning process that would be involved. And then we'll set the agenda for March 23rd, because as you know, on March 16th, that's a day off on campus, and there'll be no class on the 16th. So housekeeping, just to remind you, Brina Booth, the Pine Valley Superintendent, is going to join us on April 6th. So please send me your questions in advance so that we can get them to her and she can be a bit prepared for that meeting. So let's review the March 2nd session, which will be broadcast to you live from Puerto Rico. So at that time, we talked about communicating with families, reasons why we should communicate, what does superintendent communication look like with families, and talk a little bit about crisis communication and how to use digital media. We also talked about our ongoing communication with families. I drew your attention to this a resource from Adolescent Literacy. We talked about what the research says and our common sense as well, that when parents are involved, when families are involved with their children basically do better in school. We discussed the core concepts on March 2nd of trust, culture, and family involvement. Try to give you some examples of the type of communication a superintendent would engage in with families, because it's different for a superintendent than it would be for a building principal. We talked about personal and professional communications with families on the part of a super, routine communications, formal communications, and unfortunately the extraordinary communications. Then we wanted to make sure that we got into diversity in our school districts last week, because whenever we talk about engaging families and the community, here in the 21st century in America, that's really a matter of engaging with diverse families and diverse community members. We want to make sure we knew what constitutes diversity in our communities and our classrooms, and went through the number of criteria that are evidence of diversity in our schools. We looked at New York City schools in particular as one example of very diverse school district. We talked about what diversity looks like in your school district. We looked at the research regarding the face of public school teachers, and in our very diverse classrooms, we still don't have, at least according to the research, enough of a diverse teaching staff, and frankly administrative staff as well, that tends to match the profile of our students. Because we found out from the Brookings Institution that in fact minority students often perform better on standardized tests, et cetera, when they have at least one same race teacher. Introduce you also to the Center for Immigration Studies to get some data on diversity. We looked at a specific example of a school district, East Ramapo, that tried to tackle the issues related to diversity in their community, and then pointed out to you their Family Resource Center at Ramapo as evidence of what they're doing to bridge the gap. Also at that time, last week on March 2nd, I introduced you to something called Color in Colorado, which is a very good website to find all kinds of information about how you can support and work with your diverse family members. Also introduce you to the Pacer Center, Champions for Children with Disabilities. It talks about one example of getting off to a good start which would be positive interaction with diverse families, just as a resource for you to bookmark for future use. And we also talked about crisis communication, but in the context of how you can use the variety of different digital media and social media that's available to you to get your message across. All right, that was last week. Tonight's session is going to involve continuing to talk about this particular NELP standard to understand, engage, and effectively collaborate and communicate with diverse family members. But in this case, we're going to focus on partners in particular. All right, so let's make sure we have a working definition of what is community school partnership. For the Institute for Local Government, community school partnership offers communities the opportunity to support the needs of children and families with an intentional, enhanced, and supported academic, social, and emotional health experience in the school setting, as well as at other local agencies and community-based sites. Also, from this website, Priority Schools Campaign, here's the web page for you. We found 3 types of initiatives, because I find them working with students that sometimes there's a misperception that community schools or community partnerships take one particular form. Well, they don't. They actually can be in a variety of different formats. Here are 3 types of initiatives discussed in the article found here in Priority Schools, but they tend to cover the gamut from my experience. You have community and family community programs. These are efforts to engage the community, including families, local residents, community organization, in advancing student learning. This, in fact, is what the PTEC partnership looks like or comes under. We have another type of initiative, programs to engage parent or the family members. These are program efforts to engage families in children's learning and development. And then we have wraparound social and community services. This is what I'm most familiar with my work prior to retirement. These are programs that support social and health services to strengthen and support children and families. So we're now about to review 10 strategies for developing effective partnerships. And notice the references to previous EDU631 concepts. In other words, things that we've talked about prior to that are now surfacing again in this discussion. These are the 10 key strategies for effective partnerships. Strategy 1, agreeing on core values. Well, that'll be familiar because when we talked about mission and vision, we talked about core values, and we talked about you thinking and establishing your own core values. This also applies to your effective partnerships, where you try to go through the exercise of agreeing on core values so that you have some sense of a mission and a vision, even if not written down, as to where the partnership is headed. It's also important to listen to the community. You remember 2 sessions ago when we talked about engaging the community for identifying priorities and developing an action plan in a collaborative way that creates community consensus around what needs to happen and in what sequence. We also talked about strategy 3, using data to set our priorities and focus our strategies. Strategy 4, providing relevant and on-site professional development. Basing professional development on data and conversations among stakeholders in a way that builds both educator to educator and educator to parent collaborations. How about strategy number 5? Building collaborations with community partners. So pulling in strategic partners and developing community buy-in. This sounds like PTEC with college, social service agencies, community groups, faith-based organizations, local leaders, public officials, and businesses to improve student learning and other outcomes. Of course, PTEC does not involve all of these stakeholders. PTEC focuses on the schools, higher education, and business and industries. Another strategy, using targeted outreach to focus on high-needs communities, schools, and students. PTEC, in fact, does that in that it requires that high-risk students are involved in a PTEC program. Strategy 7, building one-to-one relationships with families and educators that are linked to learning. Strategy 8, setting, communicating, and supporting high and rigorous expectations. Strategy 9, addressing cultural differences, and that had a lot to do with our session 6 last week when we talked about addressing cultural differences, and also connecting students to the community. These are all strategies that one can engage in. when discussing partnerships. So how about potential partners in our communities? These are the variety of different partners that could be involved. Very similar to stakeholders if you'll go back to previous lessons. But potential partners run the gamut as well. We have local government, civic groups, religious affiliates, recreational agencies, social agencies, higher education, other education, and BOCES. In particular, PTEC takes advantage of partnerships with BOCES. Business and industry, also an example of PTEC. Parents and guardians, taxpayers, childless families, senior citizens, and coming back around to government. Now, in the Coalition for Community Schools, we're going to take a look at some examples of partnerships. And in the Coalition for Community Schools, we have some partnerships listed, some national models. Sorry about that. Come on. Come on. You have the Beacon Schools and the Youth Development Institute. Beacons are committed to school transformation that aims to promote healthy development and learning among all youth, families, and community members. You can look at these yourself, all right, and read this. I don't need to read it to you, especially in this pre-recorded session. Another example is Children's Aid Society Community Schools in New York. Children's Aid Society currently operates 22 community schools in New York City. Let's go back and double check the date of this article. No particular date on here. All right, so we hope these partnerships are still available. If not, reading about them can still give you an idea about what different partnerships could look like. Here in our own Western New York region, we have talked about partnerships in Buffalo City Schools. They have a strong community schools partnership under the direction of Kreiner Cash, the current superintendent. Let's take a look at what that looks like. They refer to it as a new education bargain with students and parents. And the features of this are rigorous early elementary ed, strong community schools, new and innovative high schools, extended learning excellence for all students, services for our neediest children and families, and new relationships with our teachers. This is the new education bargain. And well, this is an example of the city of Buffalo looking at its data before it began to work with the community or its partners. Here you see the degrees of poverty in the city by zip code. And in particular, the red are the more poverty identified areas of the city. Here's a graphic for you talking about strong community schools and all the partners that are working in the city. And they tried to, if you can see the highlighted areas in yellow here, these are intended to show the partners that are working in particular areas of the city. If we take a look at it not by area, but instead by the type of partner involved, we see the banks, businesses, healthcare, other partnerships, and colleges. For instance, the banks, Citizens Bank, Key Bank, businesses, Solar City and Goya, Tops Friendly Markets, healthcare, partnerships like Say Yes, United Way, Junior Achievement, Catholic Charities, and colleges. Now, staying with Buffalo, their strong community schools. Their vision is that strong community schools serve as an epicenter for the community to assist students in realizing their greatest potential. And these are the courses offered in their community schools: academic enrichment, health and wellness, additional adult courses, and so much more to come. This is an attempt on the part of Buffalo to actually track its involvement, to track the engagement. What's important here is not necessarily what you're looking at on the screen, but more important is that You do want to take a look at data around such things as engagement, number of students enrolled in programs, number of parents enrolled in programs, the number of visits. This speaks to setting your objectives in the beginning and making sure that you have measurable objectives to prove whether you were or were not successful. And then, of course, to gather data and then track it and report out. Stakeholders and others in the community, say a Board of Education, would want to know, we have this effort going on, how effective is it? Here's the Community Schools Saturday Academy Survey. All right, so this is a perception survey of how well the programs are doing. Now, let's switch gears here right now. So those are some examples of school community partnerships, in particular, drawing your attention to Buffalo City Schools. Let's focus now on P-TECH. We're going to discuss a different type of community partnership, which is the P-TECH grant partnership with NYSED. And if we take a look at the wheel we were looking at earlier, now we can focus and see which are the partners who are working with the school district to put forward the P-TECH partnership. And that's higher ed, other educational institutions, and business and industry. Here are the P-TECH grant requirements. You don't have to go here right now. For the assignment, you will, because this is where I'm drawing your attention to pay attention to and what you're going to write about in the assignment. But I have these screen shots captured, and they are here in the PowerPoint. All right, so P-TECH. The New York State P-TECH model delivers 6 core benefits to students, and you will probably know this by now, but let's go through it. A rigorous, relevant, and note, cost-free grades 9 to 14 education. Focus on the knowledge and skills students need for science, tech, engineering, and math. Cost-free 9 to 14, certainly in the public school setting. Grades 9 through 12 is cost-free, but when you get into levels 13 and 14, which is your first 2 years of college, that also has to be cost-free. You have workplace learning that includes ongoing mentoring for professionals in the chosen career sector, worksite visits, speakers, job shadowing, and internships. Starting to get a feeling for what's important and what's complicated in these grants. Intensive individualized academic support by K through 12 and college faculty within an extended academic year or school day that enables students to progress through the program at their own pace. Provides opportunity for any student in a funded high school to obtain college credit. And the college credit would be leading to an Associate of Applied Science degree or a 2-year degree that is in the industry standard for the targeted jobs in a high-tech field. And a commitment to be first in line for a job with a participating business employer, that the students would be first in line for a job in the partnering business employer following completion of the program. So if you were to have gone to this website that I pointed out to you, you're going to wind up here. And this is the P-TECH main webpage at nysed.gov. You'll see the purpose of the grant, the project period, the scope. I know this is about to expire. Let's recognize that we're going through this P-TECH grant for instructional purposes only, to give you an idea about the complexity of some of the modern partnerships endorsed by NYSED. You can see the scope of the program, the fiscal agent. Actually, it's called the LEA, the Local Educational Agency. In this case, if you are engaged in a P-TECH partnership, the money flows through the school district. They're the fiscal agent for the partners. The amount of funding is listed, talks about subcontracting, applications and due dates, questions and answers. All right. Purpose of the grant, et cetera, et cetera. If you are to go to this link, then you'll view the approved P-TECH projects. You might be very interested in doing this. So go to this link and view the approved P-TECH projects in your region, organized by Capital District, Long Island, Lower Hudson, Mid-Hudson, Mid-South, Western New York, et cetera, et cetera. All right? You can do that on your own. But what we want to get to right now is the more detailed description of the P-TECH partnership and what's required. I'm going to go through this relatively quickly because I want to get to the most important part that has to do with the assignment. And here we go. The assignment asks that when you're viewing these pages, you take a look at what's required of K through 12 education, the essential responsibilities, higher education, essential responsibilities, and business employer, essential responsibilities. Oh, sorry. All these other pages, frankly, are not that important for the assignment. But I do want to focus on these program requirements. The ones that are most important, and not necessarily for the assignment, but most important to you, to your understanding of what these partnerships look like. Just let me avoid any confusion. The assignment asks that you summarize in your PowerPoint presentation darn it. Hang on. The essential responsibilities of higher ed, K through 12 education, and business and industry. That's where you should put your efforts when you're putting together the PowerPoint, to synthesize and synopsize these pages, the essential responsibilities. But for the purpose of today's lesson, I want to take a look at the program requirements that are most involved and demanding. So, agreement by all parties is required. In other words, this has to be a formal contract. This is going to require that you have some familiarity with memorandums of agreement between, in this regards, a three-way agreement between the school district, higher education, and business and industry. It might even be a four-way agreement, especially if you are bringing in other school districts and if you're cooperating with BOCES. You might find that this is a 5 or 6-way agreement with all the partners. And you have to have clear documentation of the employment outlook. This is going to come from the target industry and the specific jobs, including quantitative projections from federal and or state labor projections, supplement by academic research, local employer surveys, and other evidence developed by the employer partners. These are the things that the grantors are going to look at to make sure that you have these things in your grant, and then they'll be checking off the boxes and giving you points for the degree to which you satisfy these requirements. You have to deliver on a 6-year curriculum beginning in 9th grade that is sequential and integrates academic and work-based instruction, provides preparation for a career field, leads to technical skill proficiency or an industry-recognized credential, and, very important, satisfies the requirements of a Regents High School diploma and AAS degree at the post-secondary institution. Most likely, you'll be able to pull in some of your current grades 9 through 12 curriculum, either put it up as already satisfying this Regents High School diploma requirements, or you may have to add items that satisfy the diploma requirement, but also articulate with the college and or industry partners. The 6-year integrated scope and sequence will introduce college courses and experiences and workplaces activities no later than the 10th grade and continue throughout the six years. And as I said earlier, this has to lead to a no-cost AAS degree, which is going to mean it's incumbent upon you and your higher ed partners to figure out how that's going to be paid for. You'll have to have a program structure that brings all the students to a common location. For instance, let's say that your P-TECH partnership is going to involve your high school and 3 neighboring high schools. And the common location is either going to be in one of those high schools, or maybe it's going to be in a local BOCES. This is what I'm finding most often happens. BOCES becomes the common location. because already students are being bused to BOCES on a regular basis to participate in the CTE programs located at BOCES. So that's going to be a challenge, to locate a common location where all students can be brought together. Priority is given to the recruitment of populations who have been traditionally underserved in post-secondary settings. And underserved is going to be your minority students and also potentially your special education population who've been underserved in post-secondary settings. And it's important to note that there can be no screening and no qualifying examinations. It has to be open to all students. Fiscal and implementation leaders from each partnership that have demonstrated experience launching and operating complex education workforce development initiatives. A clear and strong governance structure that includes identification of the lead implementation partner. A steering committee has to be included, comprised of members from the K-12 higher ed and business employer partners, as well as any additional stakeholders, and a partnership plan for program leadership, overall leadership capacity, including key leadership personnel with decision-making responsibility to identify resources and resolve any issue that hamper full implementation of the model, and a long-term commitment to a collaborative operation of the program. So you have to have a governance structure and a steering committee. You have to have a well-defined plan for the expansion of the program beyond the initial cohort, and clear time frame for full implementation of the program within the 7-year funding period. All of this has to be on paper and agreed to prior to submitting the grant. Ongoing opportunities for faculty to collaborate, in particular faculty at the high school level and faculty at the post-secondary level. So ongoing opportunities for them to collaborate. And professional development plans have to be prepared. So instructors who teach in the program can be trained as to how it's going to work. The plan should include a minimum of 5 professional development days for high school staff over the 7-year grant term. Professional development should provide opportunities for additional time for faculty to design new curriculum, develop new instructional practices, and collaborate with colleagues at partner institutions, in particular the post-secondary faculty. You have to provide for college and career preparatory services, such as recruitment, career and personal counseling, and career assessment, which means you might find that this is going to involve students in 7th and 8th grade as well, so that you can make them aware of the program, and then they can make high school choices before they get into the 9th grade. You have to have a plan for addressing any local challenges for the specific program. These may include, but not be limited to, how about transportation? You have to get students to one central location. Student recruitment from targeted populations to meet the enrollment goals. An agreement outlining how the safety and rights of students will be protected while they participate in the work experiences of the program. You have to be worried about OSHA and PESH, Occupational Safety and Health Act requirements, and similar to that, your PESH requirements at the state level. We want to make sure that students are not working or going through mentorship experiences in an unsafe workplace. You have to demonstrate evidence of financial and programmatic sustainability, and have to show that you have appropriately certified leadership and staffing with clear responsibility for required reporting. You have to attend sponsored training, NYSD sponsored training in Albany in the fall of each school year, and participate in quarterly virtual meetings to receive field updates. You have to undergo an annual evaluation by an external reviewer to address the efficacy of the P-TECH program and possibly create a corrective action plan. And the priority will be given to proposals from sending schools with a cohort high school graduation rate below 82%. With regard to BOCES applications, or where multiple districts apply as a consortium, priority will be given to proposals whose participating schools have an average cohort high school graduation rate below 82%. And by the end of this funding period, each high school that has a P-TECH program within it must have a partnership that gives all students in the high schools access and opportunity to obtain at least one college credit including but not limited to early college, high school, dual enrollment, and advanced placement courses. So you can see here, as we went through these requirements, that there's a lot of planning that has to take place. There's a lot of program articulation that has to take place between the three partners, and even more partners, in fact, if you are including more than one high school and or BOCES in your program. So these are very complicated projects and programs that NYSCD sponsors in order to promote STEM in our high schools and create a competent workforce through these types of partnerships. Now, if we had met, I would have you breaking up into small groups and do some planning to plan around a PTEC partnership. But after 30 minutes here, I'm going to do it for us, just to give you an example. So if our goal is to apply for a PTEC grant, this would be our first awareness and our organizational meeting, all right? And going back to planning to plan, if I were, well, let's not do it this way. Let's do this, let's presume planning to plan actually took place, all right? So instead, we're having our first awareness and organizational meeting of the partners. So who would be engaged in this case? Well, some decisions will have been made during the plan and plan session. But I would say that if this is going to be a regional project, and who will be engaged, it would be, say, the high school principal from the high school where I'm the superintendent. We would invite, although maybe not attended, but we would invite the superintendent and the high school principal from our neighboring school districts as well. Maybe the superintendents would designate just the high school principals attend. We would also make sure that we had a representative from business and industries that were going to be involved, and we had a representative from the post-secondary institutions that were going to be involved. How would they be invited? Most likely we would be a bit more formal here. We would, to make sure that someone got the invitation in a timely manner, we would send it out by email to the designated individuals, but I think we would also send out a paper copy to show that this is formal. We want to be a bit more, well, a bit more formal, and send out both by email and through a paper invitation, inviting people to the program. And might even have an RSVP, because there would be refreshments provided, and we want to make sure that this is going to work and be we're able to get everyone together in one place. Where will the sessions be held? That's a good question. But because we want to get all the partners together, there would be one location. Maybe it would be the BOCES, where we intend to bring all the students, and that would be the one common location that will start. That's what will be the common location for this awareness and organizational meeting. Who will facilitate the planning process? I don't think we would bring in an outside facilitator for this purpose. I think we would either the superintendent of the LEA, the host district, or maybe the BOCES superintendent. But in advance, we would have designated someone to facilitate this awareness and organizational meeting. And the data that we would be provided, possibly data, well, certainly we want to make sure that the business and industry and our local colleges and universities that were part of the partnership would get everyone on the same page. So we might have sent out ahead of time a questionnaire or a statement of expectations as to what we wanted the school districts to bring to the table. So in advance, we would have sent out a memo that says we would like to have your enrollment numbers for grades 9 through 12 in your high schools. We would like to know how many STEM courses you currently have in your high school course offerings. We would like to have a breakout by your subgroups, your ethnicity subgroups, your ELL subgroups, your special education subgroups, so that we can have an idea as to who the targeted groups might be, the underrepresented groups. That's the type of data that we would bring to a meeting and to start off. Backing up to talk about the meeting, however, certainly we would have an agenda in advance. This is the first awareness and the organizational meeting. Items that might be included on the agenda are after we introduce, there's introductions to everyone, there's a discussion about or review of the data, enrollment information in particular about our high schools. There would be a discussion about common core values and beliefs about what this program could do for our students, to make sure that we start to discuss that so we can see if we can reach some consensus about what this program would look like. And certainly, after we went through those very early steps, we would also make sure that we had a presentation on the features of the program. Because remember, business and industry and post-secondary education are those partners. They don't know what this would look like. So we would have to make sure that we had a presentation during this first meeting about what are the features of P-TECH to make sure that everyone knew what it is we are about to engage on. And then once we set the stage and got everyone on the same page in that regards, then we would probably brainstorm next steps for the next meeting. Probably would not use the very first meeting, this awareness meeting, to actually develop the grant, but we would organize ourselves. Where will we have the next meeting? What will be the agenda for the next meeting? What's a good time for the next meeting, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what it would look like. And we would have to take that step by step, record the decisions that are made in the meeting, release minutes of the meeting, which would mean someone would have had to record those and release those minutes from that meeting to the people who are involved in this partnership, and then use those minutes to develop an agenda for the future meetings. And that cycle continues. As you have the second meeting, the third meeting, you record the decisions, you release the minutes, you develop agenda for the subsequent meetings, and you go through that routine, as we discussed in our previous classes here when it comes to planning to plan. All right, so that's what it would look like after 37 minutes of this presentation. But let's get back to the assignment to make sure that you understand that. Here's the assignment scenario. You're the superintendent of schools interested in pursuing a P-TECH grant. Now, you plan to convene a cabinet meeting consisting of your middle and high school principals, your guidance director, special education director, and assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction and assessment. All right. This is the planning to plan meeting. This is not the organizational or awareness meeting that we went through here in this exercise. This exercise would have been further down the road when we actually brought the partners together. Instead, for your assignment, you're at the very first stages. All right. And your meeting agenda is to provide your cabinet with an overview of the most important elements of P-TECH. The essential responsibilities, remember I talked about that? Outlined under the headings, K through 12 ed, higher ed, and business employer, pages 8 through 11 of the document that I pointed out to you. So let me back up. So that's your assignment. You're to put together a PowerPoint presentation that really, let me flip back really quickly, synthesizes and summarizes the essential responsibilities. The essential responsibilities of K through 12, the essential responsibilities of higher ed, and the essential responsibilities of a business employer. If you want to get your hands on that very easily, go to the PowerPoint presentation that I shared with you, or go to Canvas where I've got it listed, and just use these pages to put together your PowerPoint. All right? Now, it's going to be one PowerPoint presentation, and that's the assignment that brings these three essential responsibilities together. And if you need more help with that, don't forget, during the second class, I went into detail as to what this would look like as well. All right, I'm going to end this at 39 minutes. Here's the agenda for March 23rd. We're going to switch gears and get into a new standard, which is to, candidates will know and understand how to engage in district strategic planning and continuous improvement process. that engage diverse stakeholders in data collection, diagnosis, design, implementation, and evaluation. It's the planning and continuous improvement standard. We're going to be using a textbook, Victoria Bernhardt. You don't have to buy it. Don't worry about it. But Victoria Bernhardt's Data Analysis for Continuous School Improvement. And we're going to make you aware of the history of it and the current application educational setting, and in particular highlight the different types of data and how to access data, all right, as part of the CSI process. That's what we have left for agenda for March 23rd. I want to thank you again for taking your time to take a look at this. I'm glad that you did, because if you recall, on March 23rd, I'm going to ask you some targeted questions as a way of holding you accountable for having watched this 40-minute presentation. That's it. Take care. Have a good night. I appreciate, again, phone's ringing. I was hoping we wouldn't have any disturbances. It's Marcia's mother. She'll pick it up downstairs. Thank you all. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Call from Love.
Hello.